Well, welcome Around the Workstand, Ryan. It's good to be back together and talking about what's happening in the industry. How have you been?
I've been good. Lot of travel lately. Some personal, graduation season, wedding season. So it's been nice. Maybe spread a little bit thin at work, but I think you get to a certain point in your career where you always have more work than you can handle, and you just put in the best days you can. But my life is boring compared to yours. We messaged about Unbound, but we haven't talked. How was that?
Unbound was awesome. I have become quite the fan of that event in Emporia, the little town in Kansas where it takes place. I've never seen a community embrace an event like that, from the downtown businesses where you can say, well, they get a lot of the benefit, but I mean, all the way out in the middle of nowhere, there's families out by the road cheering you on in the dark, and amazing, and an incredible course, and a weird year, and a nasty crash for me about 170 miles in, and I'm getting there. I've still got woundage in places, and I'm purple and yellow, but wasn't enough to stop me from finishing 200 miles.
Good. Now, why did you choose to crash again? Because I know you're very tactical in your racing, but that just doesn't. I don't get that choice.
It was not a choice. It was a choice. There was a slower rider in front of me on a little piece of double track, and I chose to go around that rider at an inopportune time, and caught a little baked in rut out in that Kansas sunshine, and it was over in an instant.
I know that feeling. I haven't had that type of crash in years, and I don't want to ever have one again. So
that was the heaviest fall I've had. I've had quite a few. We all have, as roadies. You have those falls and you hit hard stuff. That's the hardest one I've had. But I'll tell you what, bike flipping all over the place. Once I undid the safety thing where the electronic shifting pulls itself in, shifted just right, chain didn't come off, bottles didn't come out of the cages, straighten the handlebars, and off I went.
Fantastic product testing. And it happened at mile 170. So obviously it sucks. And, that last 30 miles had to have been super hard. You're still recovering weeks later, but grand scheme of things, it wasn't mile 20.
Yeah. Yeah, it would have been a lot harder to mentally get my head around trying to pedal 180 miles versus 30. And frankly, it really wasn't that uncomfortable. There's enough adrenaline going that it carried me through without too much discomfort.
Yeah.
Now, 3 hours later, when I was trying to pull clothes off of wounds that had already
I don't like it. I don't like it.
Hey, that's a lot of fun talking about pain.
Yeah.
Let's talk about more fun stuff. What's happening in our lovely industry that we know is bicycle retail, and you've been traveling a lot personally, but also seeing some industry folks and professional activities. What's going on out there?
Yeah. Well, so most notably, a few weeks ago, I was in Bentonville for the NBDA Summit, their final one of the year. It was a great event. On a couple of fronts, I finally get Bentonville. So I was a holdout. Early on, I think my, modest punk rock roots rejected the kind of manufactured nature of Bentonville. But man, to be able to hit rad single track right out of downtown is pretty cool. So put in some trail time with a good friend. That was really satisfying. Attendance was good. Mostly suppliers, and technology partners. So it was, that's obviously good for us. We live in the middle of the industry, so a lot of conversations with suppliers is good. And, whereas there weren't a ton of retailers there, a lot of clients, a lot of good conversations, talked a lot about Google advertising, and there was a really positive response to that. Educational seminars were great. I think the NBDA, but just really puts on a really solid agenda. I think that the dealer attendance really makes sense. It's May, and I think I get why they have the event there, because Bike Fest is that weekend, and that's why there's so many suppliers, is because they're also working booths over the weekend. But it's hard for shops to get away. There's only a pretty short selling season. But the takeaway for anybody who's watching or listening, NBDA is getting great at these events. So they're going to have 3 or 4 next year. So keep an eye on the 2026 calendar. It's totally worth going. I'll certainly be there. I don't think I'll miss any moving forward.
Yeah, I want to go. We were talking about that recently. I may go do Big Sugar, the gravel event there, just because I want to see the environment in Bentonville. It's crazy. I saw a thing. There's some kids that can actually ride a pump track to school. They've built that kind of infrastructure. That's
bonkers.
Shocking.
Yeah, it really is. It's incredible. The single track itself, great. But then you'll round the corner and there'll be a big skills park, with progressively harder drops and just very different than when you and I learned how to ride bikes.
Yeah. And a tough time of the year. I get that in the season, but it's kind of that way with Interbike a lot too, that it was that shoulder season trying to get in to close a year out, but it's worth making time when you can. Not every store can. I mean, not everybody's staffed enough to do it, but if you can, it's worth, those events are always worth it.
The events are really affordable, and especially the ones that are associated with CABDA. I mean, I don't know where East is going to be next year, but Chicago, Vegas, pretty affordable travel. In the winter, most shops are free. And, running a small business, it can be just very isolating. And getting out, spending time with your peers, having conversations, learning things together, meetings like the president of a supplier instead of, your sales rep. These are really good conversations that can be had, and it's worth the money.
Cool. What about results? We haven't talked about results in a while. You've been traveling, so we've missed one or two of these. Mm-hmm. So catch us up from the last time we talked. What did we see in May, both in our world and abroad?
Yeah. Well, first, I'm bummed we missed the April results because they were incredibly strong. Just generally kind of looking at late March through May, purely in the online space, so Workstand platform sales, parts, accessories, car racks, everything in the aftermarket space, normal seasonality with great year-over-year growth. And so talking about May last year at the end of the month is when things really started to bottom out or started to drop. P&A seems to be on track to bring us back to where we're going to be looking at a July, August peak for the year. Fingers crossed. And again, growth, which is fantastic. In the bike space, late March through April, fantastic. I mean, just incredible results. There, at the time, we had wondered, is this demand pulling forward associated with consumers trying to get ahead of price increases from import taxes? I think that's the case because bike sales in May did drop off. Now there are some stronger categories, electric bikes, especially in class 2, E-Mountain, E-Road, really, really strong. Gravel is incredibly strong. BMX is strong. And so you've got some categories that are performing well, but when you pull those out, bike sales did decline year over year in May and dropped off from April. So I don't love that. Will it rebound in June? Hard to say. But isolating May, online sales, it's up 17.5% across the platform. And that's dollars, but order volume up 21%. And so consumers are shopping online with bike shops. I'm very pleased with our ability to contribute to our clients' growth. I think in conversations, and you have more conversations with with dealers than I do. I'm not hearing great signals for how brick and mortar's doing. I'm hearing that traffic is soft and overall sales are soft. The same bike category bright spots and service is doing solid. So I'm not necessarily, I wouldn't say that our online results are going to be super, representative of what the in-store results will be when that all comes out. But I think for anybody who's, watching or listening here, just know you can count on online sales for shops to be a growth category for you. So if you're a current customer, step back, contact you, Mark. You're the best person to talk about how do I get more growth out of my website. And if you're not a customer, just give us a call. You got to be looking for where are the areas that are growing. So those bike categories, make sure you're appropriately stocked. You do have suppliers talking about possible, outages or shortages, I guess what they might call them. But with demand isolated in a few different categories, you might draw down that inventory at suppliers a little faster, and so you do have suppliers starting to talk to dealers about maybe stocking up a little bit deeper. So ask yourself what's moving. What am I doing to support it? And stocking's one part, but marketing's the other.
Yeah. And I think it's important, and you touched on this, look at the fact that consumers are shopping. They're not online shopping or in-store. They're just shopping. And sometimes that balance is going to change. Sometimes the balance is going to lean in the store, brick and mortar. Sometimes it's going to lean online. Do you have representation in both places? Because that balance is changing. And if you don't have the facility for it when it leans online, or just for the normal times where it rounds out your revenue sources, you're going to miss out on that. And that's just modern shopping. Yeah. So again, like you said, reach out. We can help. If you're not a current Workstand client, let us know. We'll talk you through the processes. Either way, we've got we just did a podcast with David Martinez. So we've built out, we're growing our knowledge base and our services to help support that combined thought of they're just shopping. How do we buy the best for both places? How do we have processes in place? We can help with all of that.
And if anybody paying attention now hasn't engaged with that David Martinez episode, the next thing you do, go listen to it. That's
don't pause us now.
No.
Don't do that. But right after,
I think we got great things to say. But again, now's the time. Take another 20 or 30 minutes. Ask yourself, what am I going to do to capitalize on the areas that are growing? And online is that. If it's not going to be growth for you, maybe you have modest expectations. Can it offset some of the erosion of sales that might be going to those consumers who are going online? But at a minimum, recognize if you don't have online sales capability or the ability to really win search to encourage search foot traffic, you got to look around and say, like, am I doing everything I can to make sure my business is healthy? Now's the time for most of the country. You got to be selling right now, otherwise you're going to be really wringing your hands come October.
Yep. I want to back up just for a second. I don't let my dog back up when we're walking and he wants to go back and sniff something, but that thought of pulling forward sales, and we probably do have to just wait for June and July to find out. But is there any indication of the amplitude of that pull forward? We saw that in the pandemic. It was a gigantic pull forward. Any implication on how big a pull forward that might be? If it is that a month or two, or does that kind of kill the summers or dampen the summer season?
I think that I think it's too complex of a question to answer. Unfortunately, you did have the pricing concern was probably one factor, but you also had some new product releases, and it's very common to get a surge of demand associated with that. Cycling ridership is up, and so that would be, that could tell us that there's still people, there's still bike demand, and so that that will kind of recover, like you're asking. But that also intersects with the consumer marketplace, and so I think I've been very pleased with how the consumer's been responding to price volatility and a lot of uncertain headlines around their retirement savings or price issues at the grocery store. Consumer sentiment was up in May for the first time since December.
I saw that.
It wasn't huge, but I mean, that's the right direction.
Up is up.
Up is up. And so will that hold? We don't know. And so if it holds, with P&A sales being so strong, I would think that bike sales will match it, or at least in those categories that are doing well, but it's a bit of a wait and see.
Yeah, I think it's unfortunate that these price concerns and the import tax fears spread across the economy. I mean, there's very little that was spared, but on the upside, that does mean that it didn't isolate the bike industry, that it was a known thing. So maybe that's a little bit of an upside as far as how quick we come back from it.
I agree 100%. There was a lot of worry amongst suppliers in that, April, May period, and half of my phone calls were, discussions of, pros and cons of adjusting MSRP versus adding import fees. how consumers might respond to price changes. And so a lot of that does seem to have worked out, which is good.
Yeah, it's one of those things where it's going to be this, nope, going to be that, going to be this, going to be that, going to be like it's hard to keep up with the decision changing and trying to adapt, which is understandable. It's unprecedented, these decisions that are having to be made across levels in remarkably uncertain times.
Yeah, no playbook
crazy
for this stuff.
What about anything else going on? You got some notes. I saw some notes on different legislation that's coming.
You may remember that this spring, after I got back from the Bicycle Leadership Conference, that my favorite seminar was the last one, and that was when Chris from Pivot and Charlie from People for Bikes, they presented on this draft legislation from People for Bikes around removing import taxes on bicycle components that would be used for assembly. And the desired outcome there is for full bicycle manufacturing in the U.S. to scale up. First, there needs to be an assembly hub that starts to be built. It's unlikely that as an assembly facility tries to ramp up, that also the components manufacturers are going to invest in domestic manufacturing at the same time. So you need to get the assembly infrastructure in place, but in order for that to be cost competitive, you need to be able to bring in the assembly components without the additional cost of an import tax. That ideally creates a flywheel effect for now all of a sudden you've got the ability to bring frame manufacturing back. So very pleased to see that last week there was bipartisan support for the draft legislation. It went to the House Ways and Means Committee. So it's progress. It's a way of, obviously capitalizing on this moment of uncertainty and the attention being paid towards domestic manufacturing and the bike industry, People for Bikes in particular, taking action to be able to capitalize on that political momentum. So fingers crossed. I think 2 years ago in the immediately post-COVID time, there's a lot of talk about bringing manufacturing back to shorten supply chains, and it seemed like a pipe dream. And now it actually turns out that there could be a path if there's political will to do it.
Yeah, outstanding. Well, great. Anything else? This has been enlightening, and I'm glad I don't want to skip any more months. I like these updates coming. I get a lot of feedback that people appreciate these updates. So anything else before we wrap it up this month?
Well, so first, if you don't mind me recording from a Hampton lobby, pin me down. Don't let me say I'm too busy to record these. I really enjoy them.
Everybody, I heard that. Everybody else hear that?
I guess depending on when people are listening, it's important to note we will be closed on Thursday. We do celebrate Juneteenth here.
Yep.
And so we will have on-call support available. We know most bike shops aren't closed. But June's an important month for us. We celebrate Juneteenth. It's Pride Month. And so we have, ways to engage our team with both of those, events during the month. But just know that, our ability to answer the phone, and return calls might be a little bit more of a delay than typical because we are closed on Thursday.
But we are here, so if you have serious things, let us know. That team will definitely get to it and try and help. And if you don't, if it's not a serious thing, then we'll talk to you the next day.
Yep.
This has been fun. So we'll get this going. We'll meet again next month and see what the results were. Do we see that snapback coming in the June numbers, or do we have to wait a little bit longer? But until then, we'll see you around the workstand.
Thanks, Mark.